Welcome to Plant Your Seed. I'm your host, Fred Ferris. On each episode, we share stories of how ordinary people have transformed their lives. Each story is compassionate, each story is authentic, and each story is a transformation. Here are the stories of the people who are changing our world by transitioning to a plant-based diet. Today on Plant Your Seed, joining us from California, we have Sabrina Fair Andronica. Sabrina is an animal activist and children's author. Her books encompass awareness, compassion, and enlightenment of animal welfare and self-growth through her fictional stories. Welcome, Sabrina.
Thank you so much for having me, Fred.
Thanks for being here on Plant Your Seed. I love the idea of affecting the future through children's books as a way of activism. How did you get started writing your first book?
My first book came to me. I was actually doing a collaboration with a couple in Germany when I first discovered their dog that passed actually about 2 days prior to the post that I saw. And the dog was a little dog who had only 3 limbs. And I saw her, and the story was so touching. And I immediately said, oh my God, this might be a great way to keep her alive and represent her strength. And she was just such a bright spirit. And I thought this would be great for children who were struggling with either the loss of a limb or some kind of sickness that's changed their life drastically. So I contacted the couple. And of course, as they were mourning, I gave them that time to mourn, but they were interested in doing a collaboration with me, but then they said they wanted to do it on their own. I let them be. Some time passed, and they contacted me again to see if we can work together and try it. And everything was going smoothly. And towards the end of the project, they kind of betrayed me in a sense. They wanted to take my name off the front cover and put it in small print on the inside. And I remember being like, that is so wrong. That's just not what we agreed on. And around that same time, we lost, my partner and I, our dog, our French bulldog, who lost the back use of his legs a year before, which is very common in French bulldogs, how they're built. Mm-hmm. And he thrived through that year, but unfortunately he got a blood clot and he passed suddenly. So I remember I didn't really take the time to mourn because I was so distracted with 2 hurts. It was like I was hurt by this couple. I was also hurt that I just lost my dog. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really take the time to mourn. And there's those 2 things just got me. And I remember I sat down and I meditated and I said, I need to not ignore these feelings. I have to confront them. And as I meditated, I pictured what it would be like to see my dog Yukon again, and how I pictured him at the Rainbow Bridge, which is, I think we all know, pet heaven. Mm-hmm. And I envisioned it so clearly in the meditation. And then some tears fell down from my eyes because I realized I had my first book. Mm-hmm. I had my first story, and I didn't need anyone else. It was definitely a reminder that I could do it all along. I think I was afraid that I wasn't going to be able to do it. So I wrote that book and in dedication of Yukon, and I had it out maybe a few months later. I connected with an amazing illustrator that I've used for my 3 other books. Mm-hmm. And we just made our first book together. And so that's what really started me on this path. And that was how I got my first book out.
Now, how challenging was it to find the right illustrator to bring your characters to life?
It definitely was a challenge because I had this certain image. I had this vision in my head and I wanted to make it as clear as possible. So I searched all through Instagram, and the illustrations that spoke to me, I clicked on, and I found so many different illustrators all over the world, in Italy, Australia, Sweden. It was amazing. And it was right at the start of the pandemic. And I remember there were some countries really struggling. And so that definitely made my search a little bit easier as well,
Hmm.
because I knew Italy was really hurting, and there was also some illustrators who were very, very pricey, and I understand they're this is their career.
Right.
So I was trying to find someone who's seasoned, professional, compassionate,
Hmm.
and reasonably priced. And I found her, and she was in Sweden, and she was actually the first one I saw.
Mm.
And my mom actually said, "You should go with that woman." And I said, "Okay, okay, but I should search around." And I searched and I searched, and I came back to her, and it was just a match made in heaven. It was quite the journey, but it was so worth it. I think I interviewed like 30 illustrators before I went back to her.
How challenging is it to find subjects to write about?
I just write what I know and
Hmm.
what I'm passionate about and what I want to get across to the next generation. And so I pick the subjects that are dear to my heart and that I want more children to know, and their parents, going forward. And sometimes we don't have the words to explain it, but I always feel like reading comes back to, is always a way to save the day. So
Mm.
reading books teaches us so much about tough topics. And so that's how I find my subjects. It's what's dear to my heart and what I want to get across to the world to make change.
When you write your books, what is the process?
Sometimes I get writer's block, and my way of dealing with that is just sitting and letting it flow. I'll take a few deep breaths, I'll meditate, and then I'll just have it, whatever's going on in my mind, transition into words.
Hmm.
And I also write with all my books rhyme.
Mm.
So it does become difficult because it slows me down a bit. Sometimes I feel like I could go a little bit faster, but because I have to have everything rhyme and, have a good beat to it and have almost a pretty rhythm to it,
Hmm.
it slows me down a bit. But I kind of just put my key points down. I like to do a beginning, middle, and end, and then fill in the spots and go from there. And sometimes I work backwards. I start with the ending and then work my way and find that beginning. So it just really depends on how I'm feeling. And if it's really speaking to me, it's so easy. It just comes out and put it on paper.
Now, how long does it take from start to finish?
My third book was probably my easiest. I finished that in a week and a half.
Really?
And yeah, my fourth book, that is a sequel to that one, that took me a couple months. So it
Hmm.
just kind of depends. I remember I saw the vision very clearly for the third book, and it was inspired by my own experience with my bully breed, Giselle. She is mixed with Labrador Retriever, from what we know,
Hmm.
and she's also pit bull, which is not technically a breed, but when you see her, she's a pit bull. And so many times when I would take her to the park, people are very fearful of her.
Hmm.
And I've had a few people, one in particular, he said, "Oh, what's her mix?" And I said what she was. And he said, "Oh, she's really calm and nice because she's a lab." I went, "Not really, but okay." And then I, so many people just cross the street when they see her, or if they have their child with them, and they pull their child in really tight, like squeezing their child's hand to get into the car as quickly as possible. And my dog loves children, so it's always heartbreaking to see that.
Mm.
But I wondered, I said, wow, what if my dog was a shapeshifter? What about if she can just change how she looked? And what would that do? If she was a labradoodle for a day, would
Mm.
that would that help? And so that's when I came up with that idea of the third book in it. So it came very naturally to me.
Now, in that book, The Labrador Retriever with the Block Head, there's the pit bull, and
Hmm.
the pit bull is trying to be someone else. How
Right.
does that relate to veganism?
We touch very deeply on breed discrimination, and also the rescue world and how important it is to adopt and not buy.
Mm-hmm.
What I wanted to do is introduce myself with my brand as an activist. I didn't want to go immediately into I'm vegan and all these books are vegan.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted them to get to know my storytelling. I wanted to softly bring up animal welfare. So I started with my first book. He's a rescuer and he dedicated his life to rescuing misunderstood breeds and special needs dogs. And he crosses over to the Rainbow Bridge on his 100th birthday. And so it was also, of course, to help children and families cope with the loss of their pet,
Mm-hmm.
but it was to highlight rescuers and what they do for animals. They are amazing people, the way they dedicate their lives to saving so many animals. The second one was my introduction to shopping cruelty free, and I feel like so many people, parents, have approached me and said, I didn't even know this still took place. The industry hides it so well.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes the same for, the slaughterhouses, the meat and dairy industry, but even more so with animal testing, especially because people think, which it's still very wrong, it's rats, it's guinea pigs, it's mice, and they don't know that dogs and cats and horses and so many animals are used in animal testing, and it's
Mm-hmm.
horrible. And I wanted to introduce this in a way that was kid friendly, family friendly, and that way they can learn how to shop cruelty free together and the impact they make by doing that. So then I transitioned to breed discrimination. And so I just kind of keep going and going along this path. And then veganism is kind of like the icing on the vegan cake. And that is where my fourth book will be the first time I use the word vegan.
Mm.
It will be the introduction to a vegan lifestyle, not only with people, but with dogs. I guess it was just climbing up the ladder to veganism, because my fifth book will be completely about how to be a vegan.
Right. Now, when you speak about breed discrimination, does that have any relation to speciesism, say a dog and a pig? That was my understanding of kind of the underlying message of the Labrador Retriever with the blockhead.
Absolutely. There's so many people that love their dogs and would do anything for them, but then they eat pork, they eat
Mm.
steak. And uh, I just wanted it to, however it affected the person, I didn't want to force it down their throat. So however it changes, their perspective on how they view things, I wanted that to happen for everyone differently. And so if somebody realizes, wait a minute, I love my dog and breed discrimination. If I say I love animals, I'm still eating them. Well, maybe it'll click in that way, or maybe they judge themselves and they want to be different, or maybe they're, judgmental with people. However, it touches their heart, that was my goal behind it. So everyone has a different message.
What made you decide to write children's books as a way of activism?
I feel like change starts with children. So the younger you are, the more aware you are, and the more compassionate you start out. I feel like it can lead to a very promising future. I feel like adults, unfortunately, have their mind very set, and they're harder to teach these very valuable lessons. So I feel like kids are already open, their minds, their hearts are open. And I figured that was the way to go if I really wanted to get my point out there. I feel like the best way was to start with children, because if a parent sees their child changing, they naturally want to almost follow their child and support them on their journey if they're a good parent. And I felt that was the best way to go, is start with the children.
Let's talk about your vegan journey. How and when did you transition to a plant-based diet?
So one day I was doing a little self-pamper day. I went to the gym, I went to the sauna, and then I treated myself to lunch at a restaurant, and I was looking through the menu and I saw chicken sandwich, pork sandwich, veggie sandwich. Uh, and
Hmm.
then I went, if I love animals, why am I still eating them? It
Right.
just that's all that happened. It wasn't a fancy story. I was 22 years old. I looked at the menu and I said, I think I'm just going to order the veggie sandwich. And I just had this idea in my head. We're going to finish, or that basically, I was like, my parents are going to finish up all the meat in the house. And then I'm going to try this journey of just, eating vegetables and see what happens from there. I mean, and it's gotten so much better since then. This was 2014 to early 2014. And my parents, being the animal lovers they became vegetarians with me. So I was vegetarian first. And then about 3 or 4 years later, at 26, I became a full vegan. And that was with the help of my partner, who was already a dedicated vegan. And yeah, it's been quite the journey. I have changed so much for the better since that day.
Now, take us back to that day. You're sitting down, you're in a restaurant, you're looking through the menu. Take us back to that day and what you were feeling at that moment when it triggered for you.
To be honest, I really feel it was the little girl in me
Hmm.
who kind of just sparked something in my mind. Because when I was little, maybe when I was 6 or 7 years old, I asked my parents, how did our food get on our plate? What happened to the animals, and why were we eating their their bodies?
Hmm.
And my parents didn't know how to answer the question. They didn't know, do we lie? Do we do like the whole Santa Claus trick and lie to her? They were trying to protect me.
Hmm.
And I feel like that little girl, now knowing the truth, came back and said, wait, well, you know the truth. Why are you still doing it? And so that was also what inspired me to write these books, because I asked questions. What does it mean to euthanize a dog or cat, put them to sleep? What does that mean?
Hmm.
Uh, you know, and why are, animals on our plates? And so for the kids who have those questions and the parents who don't know how to answer, that's why I also was inspired to write these books, to help give those parents answers to give to their children.
So you said you were 22.
Yeah,
Were you living at home?
I was living at home. Yeah.
And so then you went home and you told your parents. What was their
Yeah.
reaction?
Their reaction was, you know, they were already big time animal lovers,
Hmm.
and they trusted the decisions that I made. And when I said I was going to do something, I really did stick to it. So they saw that I was serious, and I didn't want that meat to go to waste, but I didn't want to like go back on my word and say, okay, I'm going to go back and eat this meat. And I made that decision that day. So they did finish up the food. And then once it was all out of our kitchen, they followed me on that journey. And my mom basically learned how to cook, all our traditional meals that I grew up on. She just said, okay, how do we do this the vegetarian
Hmm.
way? And then as time went on, how do we do this the vegan way? And it's fun. It's you're figuring out all these different alternatives, which ones you enjoy the most. And to me, it's quite the adventure. So we had a great time doing it together.
Now, you mentioned that you were vegetarian at the time.
Right.
What did you struggle with as far as fully transitioning to plant based?
Um, to be honest, it was the fear, the fear of the commitment to fully doing it, because I didn't want to go, okay, I'm 100% vegan and then cheat
Mm.
somewhere. And I was afraid to give up the things that I loved. Um, I also thought of traveling. I thought of how in my head it was so much more difficult to be vegan than vegetarian.
Hmm.
But then once I learned about the dairy industry and how evil it truly is, you think you're making a huge difference, and you are just by becoming a vegetarian versus eating meat and dairy. But you can do so much more for the planet, the animals, and your health if you become fully vegan. So just learning all that was it made it easier for me.
Have you seen any positive changes since you become vegan?
Absolutely. So I struggled with exercise induced asthma for most of my teen life, and it would slow me down a lot as an athlete. And I remember around 16 years old, a nutritionist told me, and I was not even vegetarian at the time, a nutritionist told me if you cut out dairy, it would help. And I just was like, oh, okay. I didn't know how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then around maybe 1920, a fellow athlete told me that you should cut out dairy. It would really help you with your cardio. I just would have asthma attacks. So it would, there would be times I was in a competition and I almost made it, but my lungs couldn't handle it. So
Right.
I wouldn't win. And so I said, all right, maybe I should really give this a go. And so that was another thing that really helped me make that transition. I I don't even remember when I started to feel a difference, but it was very, very shortly into becoming full vegan. I saw and felt it disappear. I have no more exercise induced asthma. I
Mm.
can run, I can swim, I can dance all day long.
Wow.
And it doesn't haunt me anymore. And they were right all along. I should have cut it out. So just cutting out dairy alone has really helped me as an athlete.
What did you learn from that struggle?
Sometimes you have to take a chance, and if you feel in your heart that you're supposed to do it, you should follow that and not have fear be in the way. Like I said, I just did not. I felt like I wouldn't be able to be fully vegan just with what life throws at you. And once I became vegan, I mean, it's not even a question now. I don't care if I was in a forest somewhere, I was stranded. I'm going to find berries. I'm not going to fish. Like
Mm-hmm.
I will be vegan till the day I die. So it's just crazy that I was so afraid of that. But then once I ventured into this life, it's a no brainer for me now. And so I just learning all the benefits of becoming vegan and all the success stories I've had personally and my family has had, my immediate family from becoming vegan, and my own dogs. All four of my dogs, rescue dogs, are vegan. And one of them in particular, she's another pity of mine. She's my poster child. When we first got her from the shelter, we were told that she's allergic to poultry.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, she's going to the right house, but she had red rashes and bumps all over her paws, and she was very overweight. She was 83 pounds, and she would waddle when she would walk, and she had so many allergy problems. And then just being on a vegan diet, after 6 months now, she has lost 20 pounds. She is no longer red. She has no more bumps or itches. I mean, she looks like a new dog, and people who knew her back then and see her now, they go, she looks younger.
Mm.
It's really, really amazing. And so I really want to incorporate that into my fourth book, that it is very possible for not only humans to be vegan, but dogs as well.
Did peer pressure have anything to do with your fear of being vegan?
I I was never one for peer pressure, I have to say. I've never had a drink. I never really got involved in that crowd. I've been, you know, people have tried to give me drinks and other sorts of things, and I just never felt the need to please them.
Mm-hmm.
So when I made that decision to become vegetarian, become vegan, I didn't really care so much about what people thought. It was more about I didn't want to let myself down. But I did feel I struggled a lot with bullying. And that was something that to this day, I still will never understand why people will bully vegans that are, of course, not vegan themselves. And I used to get very hurt by it. And I used to feel like I would have to argue my point across.
Mm.
And we all have our ways of being an activist. Some
Mm-hmm.
people might yell, some people might just say it calmly. What works for me is this awkwardly quiet response. I don't really say anything, and I kind of just look at them like, are you done? And to me, it kind of makes them feel, if they like crack a joke. I mean, I've had so many stupid jokes been said to me when somebody finds out I'm vegan, especially being in the fitness world. Before I was an author before the pandemic, I was in the fitness world for 7 years. And I remember one time at an event, this guy was eating a steak. He was a trainer. And he said, "What, you don't eat cows? You're afraid you're hurting the poor little cow. Moo." He actually said moo. And then he started choking on the steak. He ended up being fine. But I felt like, all right, either the cow is spiritually getting you, or just me like looking at you and my energy made you choke. Because it's this, nobody wants to feel that their jokes aren't working,
Right.
and they're making everyone in the room uncomfortable, especially the person that you're attacking. They kind of want to switch the subject as quickly as possible and maybe learn, like, maybe I shouldn't do that again. So I feel like that has worked for me, and that's how I now deal with the bullying of people.
So you've had some experience with jokes not working, is that correct? In your stand-up days?
Yeah, probably my stand up. Oh yeah. Yeah. I've been on stage. Yes, I in my early 20s, I was a stand-up comedian. Probably my longest set was 8 minutes, which can feel like 8 hours if no one is laughing.
Mm.
And I've had some really successful shows where people were laughing and having a great time. And one show in particular, I just remember it wasn't the right audience. It wasn't maybe I wasn't wearing the right outfit. I don't know, but I wasn't getting many laughs. And it's hard to come out of that. So I can only imagine, that happening to somebody who's trying to crack a joke that thinks it's going to work. And that
Mm-hmm.
person that you're trying to crack the joke about, it's not working. You want to switch the subject as quickly as possible and get out of it. So, yeah, I probably know because I can relate.
Now, what is one thing that's really exciting for you with Always Fair Books or with your life right now?
Always Fair Books has helped me just as a person alone. It has helped me through my healing journey. I've had some tragedy the last few years, and sometimes I don't know where I would be without my brand. And I've learned so much about myself along the way and my purpose. And so when I have people email me or tell me to my face that what I'm doing is making an impact, and they really appreciate what I'm doing and the message I'm spreading, and the compassion and awareness and education I'm really trying to spread to schools and shelters and sanctuaries when I go on my visits. Uh, I think I'm most proud about that. And that's what makes me really feel good. And that's what I've been doing. I've been going on podcasts, I've been visiting schools, sanctuaries, and shelter camp programs. And it's just been so rewarding. And all the times where I get writer's block or something is not working, I think back to those moments, and it just makes it very worth it. And I love to be able to put on fundraisers and raise money for sanctuaries through my books, with people buying my books and reading them. And then the money goes back to whatever animal sanctuary or rescue I picked for that month or time. And so, yeah, I'm following my dream.
Now, what is it about children's books and animals that makes you so passionate?
That's a good question. Anything to do with animals, they are my passion. So many things change in my life as I get older. My priorities have changed, but one thing that will never change is doing what I can to save animals. And everyone has their way of being an activist. Some people will protest, some people will go up to the trucks and give pigs water, and I love them all so much for that. I don't know if I would be able to do that. So I remember I would sit and toss and turn at night and be like, how can I make a difference for not just dogs and cats, but cows and pigs and all these elephants and orcas and all of these animals in captivity. How can
Mm-hmm.
I make a difference for them? And I knew I had to put my passion that I picked up as a little girl, writing. I always used to love to write, and my dad was a screenwriter, and my grandmother used to write poetry. So I just started writing as a little girl. So I knew I discovered two passions that I needed to mix the two to then give my message to children. And like I said, children are the way to the future. So children's books was the way to go for me.
Where did you get the courage to start your children's books?
Kind of like when I made that transition to becoming a full vegan, I just put my fears aside and I went with it. The one that I was probably most afraid of publishing was my second book, which is Cruelty Free is the Way to Be. Because when I looked up books out on the market, I didn't find many that taught people, that showed people how to shop cruelty free and how easy it is, that you
Mm.
don't have to support animal testing when you're shopping. And when I saw that there wasn't really a huge market for it, especially for children, I said, well, am I making the right decision? I said, it will either fail entirely or it just hasn't been done yet, and I have to
Mm.
do it. So I feel like that courage just comes from putting myself out there and putting my work out there and finding the courage to do it, just taking the chance. It might fail, it might not, it might be a great success. And so far, it's been beautiful to see 6, 7 year olds come up to me and ask, tell me that they're always going to look for the bunny on the back of a product when they're shopping with their parents. And to me, that is the best gift I can receive from writing books.
What did it feel like to have your actions aligned with your values?
It made me feel more genuine as a person. Uh, my day-to-day life has changed so much too, because I remember becoming vegan. It wasn't just about what was on my plate. It was about, okay, now what laundry detergent am I using? What makeup am I using? How can I now not hurt animals in this way? Uh, so it's just, I call it the compassionate ladder. You just
Mm-hmm.
keep climbing up this ladder and you learn more about yourself and the person that you always were. If you have compassion and that's very important to you, I feel like veganism, living that lifestyle will just open up so many portals for you. And I know now when I practice yoga, I feel very connected to myself more than I did before when I was meat based, when I ate dairy, consumed dairy and meat. When I'm in my meditation, I realize that I am doing everything I can to not cause any harm to myself, the planet, animals, and people, because this horrible industry affects world hunger. So it's
Mm.
like you're doing so much by being a vegan. And so when I practice my yoga and I feel peace with myself, I feel it more genuinely now, in a more genuine way.
Mm. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
What cookbook, book, or documentary would you recommend to someone transitioning to a plant based diet?
My favorite one, because it's one where you don't have to turn your eyes and it really gets to the point of, uh, hey, veganism can really help you out, is Game Changers. I love that
Mm.
documentary, Game Changers, especially for so many people. Like I used to be a trainer and there would be people, my clients would ask me, what do you eat? And your body's very, compliments and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say I'm a vegan. Oh, well, where do you get your protein? Or, oh, are you feeling okay? I mean, did you get blood work done? I'm like, why did you ask me? I'm your trainer. And so I just feel like Game Changers did such a great job showing these top athletes, these world champions, of how they're thriving on a vegan diet. And I feel like that is, in my opinion, the best way to convert someone, because they see that and they're like, all right, well, all the myths have gone out the window at this point. So I feel like that's my favorite documentary to share with people.
Now, finally, can you give me one word to describe how you felt before you were vegan and one word to describe how you feel now that you are vegan?
A good question. I definitely, well, physically, I couldn't breathe well when
Mm.
I would get a workout in. And I definitely felt a lot more tired. I would feel heavier. My digestion wasn't great at all. I would get so little much, but I would get constipated, and
Hmm.
there was a lot going on with my body that was like screaming at me, "Why are you putting dead bodies in your body?" And then when I became vegan, like I said, these portals has just opened up spiritually for me. Spiritually, I am more connected with myself. Um, I always, my motto every day, and I'm not full of it when I say it, is how do I make kinder choices today? And that kind of stuff didn't really occur to me before. I was always a kind person. I definitely consider myself a kind person, but I'm always figuring out how I can make kinder choices. And so, like I said earlier, I think I'm just more genuine of my beliefs and myself now after becoming vegan. And of course, physically, I can run and do some parkour if I wanted and not have any asthma attack. So yeah, it's just I could never go back. So that fear is completely out the window.
Such a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you so
taking the
much.
time. What is the best way for people to connect with you, follow you, either on Instagram or the web or social media in general?
Instagram is probably my most active platform I use, and that's just the brand Always Fair Books. And my email, if you want to write me a letter or just connect, it's alwaysfairbooks@gmail.com. So those are the two best ways to contact me and follow along with the Always Fair Books journey.
All right. Thank you again for being on Plant Your Seed, Sabrina.
Thank you so much, Fred, for having me.
Hope you are inspired by this story, and remember, it's never too late to plant your seed. Links to everything we talked about on the podcast can be found on Instagram at plant.yourseed in the show notes tab in the bio. If you enjoyed the show, remember to leave us a review, and until next time, thank you for listening.